Good day, folks. Everything new under the sun. This is a quick little commentary on today's news as it relates to wars and rumors of wars. It's ongoing, it's continually escalating. It's really shock and awe. And if we were talking about this 10 years ago, this stuff would be absolutely incredible. And I think most would believe that it was fake news, but this is going on right now in Ukraine. Incredible stuff. Let's have a look at it. And I do believe this is all part of the lead up. This war will expand. It will turn into what would otherwise be known as World War III. It will lead into an Iran Israel war and Ezekiel 38 war, I believe. I think that's the progression of events. And it will lead the world to a point where we'll be in such dire straits, we'll be so desperate that we will accept a one world government, a world leader, and total control. And we will give up our sovereignty. We will give up our US dollars, US greenback, our Canadian dollars, whatever it may be, the British pound. And because we're desperate, because we want to eat, we will accept whatever the world government is offering, and that includes the mark of the beast. and I think that's how we get there. So without further ado, let's take a look at this article here. This is, let me fix that there. There we go. A little wider than normal. So this is interesting coming out of the New York Times. So they've been trying to hide this for a while. Apparently, the soldiers have had NAZI flags on their helmets. This is a picture of one. Looks like it was scribbled in with marker on there. But this whole idea of World War II and this the West doesn't like this because the West is trying to sell this to the citizenry, to you and I, that this is a good war. This is a war for to save the Ukrainian people, and they don't want bad images like the NAZI images there. And the New York Times is now admitting it. Journalists are asking the Ukrainian soldiers to hide their NAZI patches. So that's interesting. So there you go. That apparently is actual factual news, and that's from Zero Hedge. Now here is the big update. This is Al Jazeera.com. This is their live updates. There has been an explosion at the Nova Kakhovka Dam in Ukraine. This is on the Dnieper River, and it is causing flooding downstream, significant flooding. And the pros and cons of this particular event seem to favor Ukraine in terms of what it does. It seems to be a good, false flag to blame Russia and to do further incursions or to initiate a counteroffensive, whatever it may be. But it also causes trouble for the nuclear power plant, as it has cooling pools of water to cool the reactor, and so as the water level decreases in the water backed up behind the dam, which is now destroyed, they're going to have a hard time cooling that. So they're going to have to shut it down and do something in an emergency sort of fashion. And of course, both sides are saying, well, the other side did it. There were explosions in the past from this, and maybe it was weakened from shelling, etc. But let's see. It says, let's see if the video works. I don't know if it will or not. No, it's not going to work. There you go. Ukraine and Russia accuse each other of destroying the Nova Kakhovka Dam in a Russian-controlled part of the Kherson region. Ukraine's military administration told people to evacuate in several villages on the right bank of the Dnipro River due to a risk of high flooding. Moscow says large-scale evacuation of people is not required. So that's what Moscow is saying. So, okay. And so what's the United States saying about it? Well, this is, again, from Al Jazeera. U.S. cannot say conclusively what happened in the dam breach. So the U.S. doesn't know, and maybe that's accurate. But maybe they're also trying to basically give a non-answer to something that they indeed know about. Was this part of the triggering of the counteroffensive? Was this part of some sort of psyop to get citizens of the West on board with further escalation in this war? Because the U.S., the West, has no interest and have shown no interest in wanting to stop this war. So is this one of those things where, oh, we need to give the Ukrainians more money now because this happened? So it's another possible false flag, and this is certainly on par, absolutely, with the bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline, and someone's going to pay for it, and honestly, it's probably going to be U.S. taxpayers, Canadian taxpayers, Australian taxpayers, British taxpayers, all the people in the West. We're paying for this because we're supplying money and weapons for this war. So the longer it goes on, the more money the government is uh, giving to Zelensky to keep that going. So the military-industrial complex is making a ton of money. Envoys are starting to be recalled. Russian summons Belgian envoy after armed men allegedly use Belgian weapons. So, as American weapons, Belgian weapons, other NATO weapons are pulled in and used so obviously in the war, Russia is starting to call people on it. And here, related to the flooding here, the significant flooding, urgent international response needed for dam disaster, says Amnesty International. So this is going to cause a ton of people to have their homes destroyed, their farms, etc., and they're going to have to evacuate. So this is a significant thing. This is ongoing. This is going to play out over the next couple of days as that water heads downstream, floods whatever it's going to flood, destroys whatever it's going to destroy, and then eventually slow down to whatever the original size of the river was, which was likely relatively small. And of course, we have Ukraine calling Russia a terrorist state. So interesting situation there. Again, this is a massive event. But because there has been so much shock and awe, starting with the global pandemic, we are all, basically dumb to the news that it's happening. It's so incredible, never happened in anybody's lifetime before. But because the news coming out is just shock and awe daily, nothing surprises us anymore. And the world should be surprised. We should be waking up and saying, "Hey, what's going on with this? Hey, what happened with the pandemic? And what are the repercussions of all the things that are happening? And hey, in the government is doing all this, and we didn't vote on any of it. Did you have a referendum to support Ukraine? I know we didn't in Canada." So maybe we should have more discussions about what exactly we are doing here. Are we interested in stopping this war, actually helping Ukraine, or is the whole goal of the governments to uh, support and finish and follow through with World War III? If that's the point, maybe put that to the citizens of Canada and the United States and other countries and say, do you vote for World War III or do you not vote for World War III? Or should we, give land up, tell Zelensky to give land up in Ukraine and come to a peaceful resolution? Of course, they're not going to do that. So this is an interesting one. This is a warning about the supply chain. And I saw another YouTube channel speaking about this particular one. This is Hal Turner. Hal Turner Radio Show.com is the website. And it says institutional kitchens are being warned to have food stored for a 10-day disruption. This is May 30th, 2023. Apparently, they're being told by government officials now to be ready for and stocked up for a 10-day disruption. Is this because of potential imminent cyber attacks, retaliation, maybe for the dam or something else happening in Ukraine? Remember, Cyber Polygon is something that they ran simulations for, just like Event 201, where they ran a simulation for the pandemic. And by the way, the WHO is looking to run another simulation for the next pandemic. But Cyber Polygon is one that hasn't really come to fruition. I think maybe there was kind of attempts to get it started. Certainly been a lot of cyber attacks on businesses in the U.S., but it hasn't really hit the general public very hard yet. But apparently the government thinks this is quite possible, and they are considering trouble in the supply chains. So institutions like hospitals, jails, prisons were told casually 3 weeks ago, beginning of May, they should probably have enough food on hand to get through a 10-day disruption of supply chains. being warned of a supply chain outage. The warnings are coming down from vendors and now from the government. Now we have this on top of news that there are emergency, warning cell phone texts going out in Europe, in Russia, as it relates to potential emergency measures, what to do in case of sorts of emails and text messages, and that's happening in the West as well. Happen in Britain, and they're over the last number of months they've been gearing up and testing emergency messaging in the West, in Canada, USA as well. But so this is interesting. Is a supply chain disruption coming? And the upcoming event is a NATO exercise, June 12th to the 24th, and you've heard about this on other channels, where they're going to have, I believe, the largest number of aircraft, as I understand, in this exercise in Germany, I believe it is, to do some. It's basically muscle flexing for Russia to say that NATO is strong, we have all our weaponry, but also it's conveniently set up and being run in very much a forward operating base, and so if they needed to go live with it, from a drill to go live and an invasion or a counteroffensive, then they would be able to, and they have assets ready close in under the disguise of being a NATO training exercise. So June 12th to 24th, near the Ukraine conflict, NATO exercises. It says goes hot, and there are some type of massive exchange, as reported today here. It says if the powers that be already know there is some type of wild weasel situation between NATO and Russia, let me scroll up here, then it would be in their interests of TP, the powers that be, to cover their bottoms and make their institutions have food supplies. So is that kind of the first wave of the government getting institutions ready to have a supply of food? And then maybe next comes the civilian warnings to say, hey, maybe you need a 24-hour supply, a 72-hour supply of emergency rations and equipment, for potential power outages or supply chain disruptions. It could be the start of that. And because they're going to start with the big players first, the Costco's and Walmarts, and say, get prepared for this. Maybe get a couple extra truckloads of whatever it is in your storehouses just in case something happens. Common sense tells us these institutions wouldn't be getting this warning nationwide in the U.S. unless a supply chain disruption was in fact going to affect the entire nation. What else but a big exchange between NATO and Russia could affect the entire nation? And I think they're getting ready for a cyber attack. And it could it be the fulfillment, really, after Event 201 and the pandemic, the fulfillment of the cyber polygon, cyber attack simulation. Now, as always, there's interesting comments. I don't know if where is it here? I should have highlighted it. I read it before, but there were some interesting comments here about what could potentially happen. On Sunday, CBS reported that government was warning about a possible cyber attack that could take down the U.S. power grid, done by domestic extremist groups. Go after the white males, because those are the ones causing the problem. It's not someone from outside. It's always probably the bad conservative Christians that are conspiring and looking to do it. But they're equating them with the Russians. And this could take out power to hospitals and police stations. Now we hear, it says this commenter, that the government is telling institutions to stock up on food for a supply chain disruption. Again, is this a warning because they kind of know what is coming in advance? So you need to be prepared, folks. I think there's a lot of good information on the ground, and ultimately, biblically, we know all this sort of stuff is going to happen. And it looks like the government is now kind of getting the big industry prepared for this. And is this just prudent preparation for a potential emergency? Or again, does the U.S. government have intelligence? Or are they indeed planning, or they know of a plan to initiate something that would cause a wider conflict and then direct attacks on the United States? So I don't know. I'm just reading you the articles, and we know what's coming biblically speaking. Times are going to get hard. Apparently, in end time Bible prophecy, the United States is not a directly named strong country, and that means something takes them out. They may not be destroyed, but they're unwilling or unable to join in any of the significant conflicts that are mentioned in the Bible. So Ezekiel 38, of course, being the prominent one, where the young lions of Tarshish are simply asking the invading nations, "What are you doing? Are you coming to steal stuff?" But they're not coming to the aid of Israel. So it's interesting, and I believe that points to the fact that the United States is no longer supporting Israel for whatever reason. Politically or financially, they don't have the ability or the will at that point. And this could be an example of how the United States would be taken out. The economic system crashes. The world is in complete famine and chaos. And when Russia invades Israel for food and gold and silver money, because the world is in famine and global collapse, the U.S. is not in a position, nor is NATO or any Western nation in any sort of position to support Israel at that time. So interesting. And it would take a lot to take out NATO and the United States, really, from the equation. It's going to take a lot. So it's going to be pretty crazy here, and I don't think we've seen anything yet. This gets worse. 2023 gets worse, just as I've been saying every year. At the beginning of the year, this gets worse. And the shock and awe continues. The incredible updates continue. Follow Al Jazeera, follow RT.com, follow whatever other news source you have. But significant things are happening. The latest news is Poland's calling for more sanctions on, Russia. And what's Zelensky saying about the counteroffensive? He says the destroyed dam will not affect the counteroffensive plans. Maybe that's because they planned that into the counteroffensive. Maybe that's because that was part of the counteroffensive. Because it seems to favor Zelensky a lot and Ukraine a lot to do that, if only to look better and to beg for more money and armaments from the NATO countries, and say, look, Russia's bombing us, you need to help us now. And so it's incredible, folks. I'll leave it there, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.